Okay. Hi, my name is Mara Topping, and I'll be leading the class on private equity and emerging markets and frontier markets, together with my associates, Kate McCullough and Yola Hanlan. The class will be focused on developing an understanding of the business environment and market and other conditions that allow for a successful emerging or frontier market private equity investment. We're going to be looking at the structures that are used for making these types of private equity investments, and we're going to be looking at the stakeholders that are involved in making private equity investments and the processes that are engaged in to develop these types of products by those stakeholders. The class will teach you about financial concepts included in the development of these private equity products. And we'll also take a look at some of the risk mitigation factors to address what are real or perceived risks involved in investing in these types of emerging and frontier markets. We will practice skills of negotiation, and you should have the opportunity to be able to experience and think about the different perspectives from which the different players in the emerging markets will be engaged. Private equity is now becoming an increasingly core element of international development programs, whereas previously the focus of development institutions was more on the public sector side or on the grant side. Increasingly, folks are viewing private equity as the way to sustainably address a longer-term development impact. And development not just in the economic sense, but also in the social sense. A lot of the markets that we're dealing with are going to be markets where the attempt is to not only build good financial returns, but also to ensure social, environmental, and other impacts. And these private equity developments are one of the very successful ways in which we're seeing players engage to address that goal. For those interested in this class, I think that the class is good for folks who have taken the Part 1 Emerging Markets class, but it's not necessary for you to have any sort of prerequisite for this class. Folks that are interested in this class will also be individuals that may want to end up working in the private sector, in private equity investment houses, or in other sorts of alternative asset management enterprises. But it's also a good class for those of you that may intend to work in the public sector, for example, in Treasury, the Fed, the State Department, the World Bank, any of the development financial institutions, which make up a big part of my own client base and are significant investors in the private equity space in these emerging and frontier markets, and certainly for all MSFS concentrations. My name is Mara Topping. I'm a partner at White & Case, which is a global law firm with offices around the world. I have built the emerging markets private equity practice here at White & Case. I was for 3 years in the legal department at the IFC. I sit on the Emerging Markets Private Equity Association Legal and Regulatory Council, and I co-founded and co-chair the Legal and Regulatory Council for the Africa Venture Capital Association.
I'm Kate McCullough. I've been at White & Case for almost 8 years now, and most of that time I've been working for Mara doing private equity funds. Most of what I do is helping sponsors form private equity funds that invest in emerging and frontier markets all over the world, India, Africa, Asia, Latin America. And I also have a particular focus on working with development finance institutions, both across the table and representing those institutions like IFC, CDC UK, when they make investments into private equity funds that invest in emerging markets. A lot of the funds that we formed have a double bottom line. So they focus on not only commercial returns, but also having a development impact. And part of the challenge that we face when structuring them is figuring out how to bring those two goals together and create a product that really works for everyone.
My name is Yola Hanlan, and I work with Kate and Mara at White & Case as well. A lot of the work that I do in the investment funds group is not just in fund formation, but also in the investor representation side. So when we represent university endowments or family offices and large institutional investors, as they're looking to make investments both in the developed countries, in the U.S. and in Europe, as well as in emerging markets, which gives me and us a good sense of exactly what the different terms are in emerging versus developed markets, as well as what institutional investors and very sophisticated investors are looking for and how they're making their arguments when they're entering into a private equity vehicle.
Well, the course is really broken down into 3 elements. First, we're going to give you a general overview of investing in emerging markets, and we're going to be looking at some of the key business and regulatory factors that need to be in place in order to have a successful private equity investment. The second part of the course is focusing on structuring and negotiating actual private equity investment vehicles. Here we're going to be telling you about the different stakeholders, the sponsors, the investors, what their goals are, what approaches they take to negotiation. And we're also going to be looking at some of the key private equity fund terms, like the split between the general partner and the limited partner decision making, distribution waterfalls, performance fees, and how those terms differ between emerging markets and developed markets. The last part of the course is going to be an actual simulated negotiation where you're going to take on the roles of the different stakeholders in this market and actually negotiate a fund. So we want you to be able to take the tools that you've learned in the course and really turn that into something.
This is not intended to be a heavy reading course. Our intention is really to make this as practical as possible. While the first 2 segments of the course will be underpinned by theory and academic readings, our intention is really that you digest the reading materials that are required of you for each class, and then that you put them into play, especially in the 3rd segment of the course. One of the highlights of the course is indeed that 3rd segment, where during the simulated negotiations, we'll be pairing you with practitioners from the development finance institutions, from large university endowments, from fund sponsors, from the fund sponsor side as well, who will be working with you hand in hand as you negotiate your fund document. In terms of grading, we'll have a midterm exam where 35% of your grade. The final negotiation and presentation will be worth 40% of your grade, and class participation, which we really expect of everyone, will be worth 25% of your grade.
So it should be a lot of fun. I think you'll learn a lot. You'll get to meet a lot of interesting people, and we really look forward to having you in the class.